Definition of marriage according to the Code of Canon Law of the Catholic Church. The Canon 1055, paragraph 1 of the Latin Code defines marriage as the matrimonial covenant by which a man and a woman establish between themselves a partnership of the whole of life, is by its nature ordered toward the good of the spouses and the procreation and education of offspring. This covenant between baptized persons has been raised by Christ the Lord to the dignity of a sacrament. Thus, according to the Code of Canon Law, marriage is a covenant. It is between a man and a woman. They establish a partnership for the whole of life. The purposes of the marriage are the good of the spouses and the procreation and nurturing the children, and finally, marriage is a sacrament.
Hey everyone. Today I'm diving into a fascinating topic. Is marriage a covenant or a contract? Let's uncover the truth together. So in 1930, Pope Pius V's encyclical Casti Connubii called marriage a contract. Fast forward to Vatican II's Gaudium et Spes in 1965 and Pope Paul VI's Humanae Vitae in 1968, and marriage is described as a covenant. Confusing, right? But let's break this down. Both terms, contract and covenant, appear in the Code of Canon Law. Canon 1055, paragraph 1 says marriage is a covenant, while paragraph 2 calls it a contract. Essentially, marriage starts as a contract but becomes a covenant. Now let's dig deeper. Contracts are about fixed terms and legalities, right? But covenants go beyond that. Covenants are about personal relationships and mutual commitment. They're about fidelity and spontaneity, not just legalistic prescriptions. Think of it this way: in a covenant, the legal aspects are there, but they don't define the relationship. It's the personal commitment that matters more. Interestingly, in the Bible, God uses the language of marriage to describe his love for us. God's love has all the characteristics of married love, but goes beyond it. It's faithful, dependable, unconditional, and irrevocable. It's tender yet strong, passionate but constant. It's a love that forgives endlessly and welcomes us back, no matter what. So in Christian marriage, this divine love is mirrored, making marriage ultimately a covenant.
Marriage is a profound institution, rooted in nature and designed with purpose. At its core, marriage serves three essential aims: the good of the spouses, the procreation of children, and their upbringing. These aren't just ideals, they are fundamental aspects that cannot be ignored. When two people unite in marriage, they commit not only to each other but also to nurturing a family. This bond is meant to foster love and support, creating a safe environment for children to thrive. Excluding any of these purposes undermines the very essence of marriage. It's a beautiful intertwining of love, responsibility, and legacy, where each element enriches the others, creating a harmonious life together.
Hey everyone. Today I want to talk about something beautiful and profound. What it really means to establish a partnership of their whole life in marriage. Now, according to Canon 1055, paragraph 1 of the Latin Code, marriage is defined as a union where a man and a woman enter into a lifelong partnership. But it's so much more than just a legal definition. The Vatican Council too describes marriage as an intimate partnership of life and love. The Latin term totius vitae consortium is used here, which means a comprehensive partnership of life. Think of it as a close association, partnership and connection, a communion of goods, life and destiny to be maintained perpetually. So what makes up this consortium vitae? Let's break it down into three essential elements. First, it's about recognizing your spouse as a person. That means acknowledging their individuality, their own identity and spirituality. It's about showing them sensitivity and respect. Second, it involves a willingness to establish a partnership. This isn't just about living together. It's about understanding, caring, and offering yourself to build up the other person. It's oblative love, selfless and giving. And third, it's about shared responsibility in child rearing. Marriage isn't just a romantic involvement. It includes the commitment to raise and educate children together. This consortium vitae is not just cohabitation. It's an all-embracing union, sexual, corporeal, spiritual, moral, and intellectual. It's about being husband and wife through all life's ups and downs. In essence, marriage is a covenant, an unconditional promise that transcends a mere contract. It's about mutual support, shared experiences, and striving for holiness together. And remember, this partnership is a reflection of the love between Christ and the Church. It's a journey towards personal growth, mutual support, and the upbringing of children. So let's cherish and honor this sacred partnership. It's a profound and multifaceted union that enriches our lives and brings us closer to one another and to God. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insightful content.
Dear friends, in this episode, I share with you the meaning of the good of the spouses in marriage. Canon 1055, paragraph 1 of the Latin Code says that the good of the spouses is one of the purposes of marriage. The ordering of marriage for the good of spouses is indeed the essential element of the matrimonial covenant and not the subjective end or the personal ambitions of those marrying. The nature and implications of this good of the spouses cannot be adequately expressed. The following are some options. 1. It is an all-embracing expression implying physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual well-being of the couple. 2. 6 obvious qualities constitute the essence of good of the spouses, namely partnership, benevolence, companionship, friendship, caring and love. 3. The term good of the spouses refers to the good of the both spouses and, therefore, to achieve this common good, each partner must be committed to the promotion of the good of the other. To enter marriage with the purpose of personal fulfillment only is to bring into it the seed of destruction. Dear friends, in this episode, I share with you the meaning of the procreation and education of children in marriage. Canon 1055, paragraph 1 of the Latin Code says that the procreation and education of the children is another important purposes of marriage. The intimate interpersonal relationship of husband and wife is itself ordained towards the reception of offspring in a human fashion and towards its education. It is technically called bonum prolis, that is, good of the child. It is an essential component of the partnership of the whole of life, and it consists in procreation and education of the children. These two elements are essentially united. In the first place, the spouses are to be open to procreation. Once the child is conceived, the parents must preserve it through birth and nurture it through their love. Procreation involves more than the physical or biological dimension of the sexual relationship. Procreation is a process, which is completed by nature and is dependent on the total union of the man and woman in an ongoing love relationship. This purpose of marriage thus, in the first place, recognizes right and obligation to conjugal acts, which are naturally open to the generation of offspring. Secondly, the good of the offspring implies that it is not sufficient to give right to conjugal acts open to procreation, but it is also necessary to preserve the child from the moment of its conception. Thirdly, the good of the offspring is not to be restricted only to its physical well-being, but should also encompass the moral and spiritual welfare of the child. For, a child is not merely a biological and physical entity, but a person with profoundly moral and spiritual dimensions. The wholesome education of the child ought to comprise these aspects. When this right to wholesome education of the child is denied, for whatever reason, the right to the good of offspring itself should be regarded having been denied. Therefore, the term education is not to be merely understood as formal academic education. It means the total human development of the child inasmuch as it is a person. The Code of Canon Law clearly says that marriage is a sacrament. Canon 1055, paragraph 2 says that consequently a valid marriage contract cannot exist between baptized persons without its being by that very fact a sacrament. Thus, persons, Catholic or not, who are baptized validly are capable of a sacramental marriage. If baptism takes place after marriage, the sacramentality is acquired then. Sacraments are objects and human actions that show God's grace and actions. They are visible signs of invisible grace of God. Through the sacraments, we share in God's life, we encounter and understand the spiritual world. In a Christian marriage, exchange of vows, reception of consent by the priest or deacon are the human actions, the joining of the two persons in marriage, that is, two made one is God's action. Most complete visible sign of this unity is sexual act. Couples who remain open to grace of sacrament become a sign of communion of the Trinity and Christ's union with the Church. In the East, the sacramental character of marriage was accepted and emphasized from the 5th century onwards. But, in the West, it was fully recognized only after a long period of time. Although the early Christian writers referred to marriage as sacramentum, mysterion, only in the 13th century, marriage was defined as one of the 7 sacraments. This was universally declared only by the Council of Trent in the 16th century. Thanks for watching. Kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel, Canon Law Explained, for more videos on canon law. Canon 1056 of the Latin Code of Canon Law speaks of the 2 essential properties of marriage. The essential properties of marriage are unity and indissolubility. In Christian marriage they acquire a distinctive firmness by reason of the sacrament. First let me speak about unity. Unity is one of the essential features of every marriage, whether Christian or non-Christian. However, in virtue of the sacramental dignity of Christian marriage, unity in Christian marriage acquires a special firmness. Unity means oneness. A husband has only one wife, a wife has only one husband. It means that marriage can take place only between one man and one woman. It is monogamy. It is against polygamy and polyandry. Unity involves fidelity in married life. Unless the spouses remain faithful to each other, they cannot in fact constitute a real communion of life which involves the complete and exclusive mutual acceptance and commitment to each other. Fidelity is not merely the absence of extramarital relationship but faithfulness and commitment to the interpersonal relationship between the spouses. Now let me speak about the indissolubility. Indissolubility means that a validly contracted sacramental marriage can never be dissolved by any human power under any circumstance, that is to say, a valid marriage cannot be dissolved at one's will or with mutual consensus of couple. Marriage bond is dissolved only through the death of one of the parties. Indissolubility can be intrinsic or extrinsic. Marriage is intrinsically indissoluble in the sense that it cannot be dissolved by the will of the spouse. Marriage is extrinsically indissoluble in the sense that it cannot be dissolved by the intervention of an external agent or authority either. In Roman law, marriage was held intrinsically dissoluble. It affirmed that it is the consent of the spouses that constitute a marriage. This consent was identified with the conjugal love, which is the will of a man and a woman to live together as conjugal partners, and the marriage continues to exist as long as the conjugal love exists between the spouses. Once it disappears, their marriage also comes to an end. The modern civil law systems do not admit the intrinsic dissolubility of marriage. Nevertheless, most of them accept the extrinsic dissolubility, and accordingly a marriage can be terminated through a decree or decision of a competent public civil authority under legally established conditions and after a lawful procedure. The Church also does not admit intrinsic dissolubility, whereas in exceptional cases, such as non-consummated marriages, Pauline privilege, and dissolution in favor of faith, extrinsic dissolubility is accepted according to the conditions and circumstances established by the Code of Canon Law. Christians always believed in marital indissolubility from the very beginning of the Church. The indissolubility of a sacramental marriage becomes absolute through its consummation. Matrimonial consent. Canon 1057, paragraph 1 of the Latin Code speaks of consent of the spouses in marriage. It says that a marriage is brought into being by the lawfully manifested consent of persons who are legally capable. This consent cannot be supplied by any human power. The paragraph 2 of the same canon speaks of the object and purpose of this consent of the spouses in marriage. It says that matrimonial consent is an act of will by which a man and a woman by an irrevocable covenant mutually give and accept one another for the purpose of establishing a marriage. Marriage attains its fullness by exchange of mutual consent and consummation. Without mutual consent of the couples, there is no marriage. It is consent which makes or constitutes a marriage. Exchange of consent must be a human and personal act. It is the free and deliberate consent of a man and a woman that constitute a marriage. From the point of view of natural law, it is sufficient that consent can be manifested in any form desired by the couple. But marriage as a social institution comes under both the civil and ecclesiastical jurisdiction, and both have laid down norms and guidelines to be observed in exchanging the marital consent. Otherwise, the marriage would be invalid. The code clearly says that only legally capable persons can give consent. According to Canon 1058, every person has the right to marry. But considering the sanctity of the marriage and the common good of the community, the legislator gives certain norms and regulations to regulate the exercise of this right, whereby certain restrictions are imposed on certain persons under certain circumstances, which we call impediments and ecclesiastical prohibitions. For example, the persons affected by impotence, lack of sufficient use of reason, etc. cannot validly consent. Apart from it, the very nature of marriage itself requires certain conditions and qualities in the persons. The object of the consent is the mutual giving and acceptance of the spouses as persons to constitute a marriage as defined in Canon 1055, paragraph 1. Thanks for watching. Kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel, Canon Law Explained, for more similar videos.
According to Canon 1058 of the Latin Code of Canon Law, every individual has the right to marry. However, this right comes with certain responsibilities and regulations to uphold the sanctity of marriage and the common good of the community. There are specific impediments and ecclesiastical prohibitions that restrict certain individuals from marrying under particular circumstances. For instance, those who suffer from impotence or lack sufficient use of reason are deemed incapable of entering into marriage. These norms ensure that marriage is not only a personal commitment, but also a social institution that requires certain qualities and conditions in both partners. Understanding these regulations is crucial for anyone considering the sacred bond of marriage. In the realm of Catholic marriage, Canon 1059 of the Latin Code outlines a fascinating interplay of laws. It asserts that the marriage of Catholics, even when only one partner is baptized, is governed by divine law and canon law. This means that beyond the spiritual significance, there are specific ecclesiastical guidelines that shape the union. But it doesn't stop there. Civil law also plays a role, but only in terms of the marriage's civil effects. This triad of laws ensures that a Catholic marriage is not just a personal commitment, but a sacred covenant recognized by both the Church and the state. So, whether it's the sacramental grace or the legal framework, each aspect is crucial in understanding the full picture of Catholic marriage. In the realm of Catholic marriage, Canon 1059 of the Latin Code outlines a fascinating interplay of laws. It asserts that the marriage of Catholics, even when only one partner is baptized, is governed by divine law and canon law. This means that beyond the spiritual significance, there are specific ecclesiastical guidelines that shape the union.
Welcome to Canon Law Explained. Today we're diving into Canon 1061 of the Latin Code, which speaks about three types of marriages. We're going to unpack Canon 1061 together, looking at what it means for a marriage to be ratified and consummated, and even what's called a putative marriage. You might be surprised at what you discover about this beautiful sacrament. A ratified marriage is the first step in a lifelong journey together. It's when two baptized people freely exchange their consent to marry, making a solemn promise to each other, doing so in front of the church, surrounded by their loved ones. For a marriage to be considered ratified, it needs valid consent, canonical form, and no impediments. This ensures the union is recognized by the church. When a marriage is ratified, it's like this incredible bond takes hold. It's called unity, a deep connection that binds them together, and it means the couple becomes a true single unit, sharing their lives in every way. Even though the Church sees ratified marriage as permanent, Canon 1142 tells us that in certain serious situations, the Pope can dissolve a ratified marriage that has not been consummated, providing a path forward for those in need. Now let's talk about what happens when that union becomes even deeper, when it transforms into something even more profound and sacred. Consummation is when a husband and wife engage in the marital act, open to the possibility of new life, a beautiful expression of their love and commitment. It's the total giving of oneself to another, physically and spiritually, a union that transcends the physical and touches the soul. For the Church, consummation is like the final seal on the sacrament of marriage, solidifying the bond in a way that is both sacred and unbreakable. Think about it like this. Ratification is like building a house. laying down the foundation and structure, but consummation is like moving in and making it yours, filling it with love and memories. It's in this space, in the intimacy and love of a consummated marriage, that the couple most fully lives out their vocation, their calling to be one. Their calling is to love and support each other as God loves them, to be a living testament to the power of divine love in their everyday lives. Life is complicated, and sometimes, even with the best intentions, things aren't always as they seem. Relationships in particular can be filled with unexpected twists and turns that challenge our understanding and expectations. This is where the idea of a putative marriage comes in. It's a concept that helps bring clarity in situations that are otherwise mired in confusion and uncertainty. Imagine two people get married, believing they're doing everything right, but there's an impediment that means their marriage isn't valid. This could be due to a variety of reasons, such as a previous undissolved marriage or a legal technicality. If at least one person entered the marriage with a sincere belief that it was valid, it's called a putative marriage. This belief is crucial because it underscores the good faith and genuine intentions of the individuals involved. Even though the marriage isn't technically valid, the Church recognizes the good faith of the person who was unaware of the problem. This recognition is important as it acknowledges the honest mistake and the genuine commitment made. Think of it like buying a house, signing all the papers, but discovering the seller didn't actually own it. The buyer acted in good faith, believing everything was in order. The Church takes that into consideration, especially when it comes to the care of any children from the relationship. The welfare of the children is paramount, and the Church seeks to protect their interests. Once the truth comes out, the situation needs to be addressed, usually through the process of annulment. This process helps to formally recognize the issues and provide a path forward for all involved. So there you have it, a closer look at the 3 types of marriage according to canon law. Thanks for watching. Kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel, Canon Law Explained, for more insights. If you have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover in future videos, please leave them in the comments below. God bless.